Do we have the total dismemberment of the steel structure? Well, watch as the South Tower is destroying itself and disappearing into this cloud. What we would expect is this tilting mass to fall in some mangled heap down at the bottom of the ground, and yet it disappears into this dust cloud. At 22 degrees, it's off-center of the building below. How can it crush the building below at any rate when it is falling off and continuing its angular momentum, theoretically? We have asymmetrical damage from the airplanes, asymmetrical damage from the fires, and asymmetrical loading from the building above. Watch what's happening below. Complete symmetrical destruction, like the firemen described, bands of explosions, pop, 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 all the way down the building at 2/3 of free fall speed, and an equal distribution of debris where the steel frame skeleton is almost completely broken up. How about the lateral ejection of steel? 9-ton perimeter wall units, most of them ejected 50 to 70 miles an hour outside of the perimeter walls, landing up to 600 feet away. This requires an enormous amount of energy. How about the floors? We had 110 floors in each of these twin towers, each an acre in size, 4 and 5-inch thick concrete laid over 22-gauge metal decking. How many of these floors do we find at the bottom of this gravitational collapse? Not 50, not 10, not 1. The debris shows only core columns, perimeter columns, aluminum cladding. Where did the pancakes go in this pancaking collapse? We're looking for pancakes like these in a traditional pancaking collapse. Do we have enormous clouds of pyroclastic concrete? Well, where did the concrete go? All we see in the remains is dust and steel. Direct evidence of explosive destruction. Again, fire can't create any one of these characteristics. And how about that NIST report? We were told that this is the answer to the 2005 as to how the Twin Towers collapsed, but the entire $20 million 3-year effort by NIST stops at the initiation of collapse. I am not kidding you. Their objective, it doesn't actually include the structural behavior of the tower after the conditions for collapse initiation were reached. Why not? Structural engineers do this for a living, calculate the ability of the structure below to resist any impacting mass from above. Had they gone any farther in their analysis, they would have had to have accounted for all of the evidence for explosive controlled demolition that begins at that point. They had to stop there. They had no choice. What do they call this? The final report on the collapse of the World Trade Center Twin Towers. There is no analysis on the collapse whatsoever. It is a complete Potemkin village designed to explain something that it doesn't even begin to do. And they acknowledge that. In our request for correction, they acknowledge we are unable to provide a full explanation of the total collapse of this building. They have 1/2 page which speculates that after the initiation of collapse, what we have is global collapse ensuing. Well, the videos showed that. Essentially came down at free fall acceleration. They acknowledge that too. Interesting, prompting their own chief science division, Dr. James Quintier, to look at real alternatives that might have been the cause of the collapse of the Twin Towers. Do we have expert corroboration? Plenty. Here's William Rice, who states, as many of our 30 structural engineers with architects and engineers for 911Truth state, the prevailing theory would have us believe that each of the Twin Towers inexplicably collapsed upon itself, crushing all 287 massive columns on each floor while maintaining a near free fall acceleration, as if the 100,000 or more tons of supporting structural steel framework underneath didn't exist. I would submit that fire can't even create one of these, let alone all 10 of them, along with additional testimony, which you'll see in the DVD, a whistleblower's expert corroboration foreknowledge also with the Twin Towers. This is proof beyond a reasonable doubt of destruction by explosive controlled demolition. So we have some very serious problems with NIST. In fact, let's summarize our chief concerns about the veracity of these reports. NIST lied about the fire severity and duration in all 3 skyscrapers. NIST lied about the evidence of molten iron and steel in the rubble. NIST refused to test for explosives when explosive demolition was the most likely hypothesis. NIST and FEMA would not follow the NFPA guidelines for fire and explosion investigation, looking for explosives in the residue. NIST will not release the computer model and input data, claiming that its release would jeopardize public safety. NIST ejected the FEMA Appendix C documentation and photos of melted steel beams. NIST's animated computer model bears no resemblance to the actual collapse as seen in the videos of World Trade Center 7. In the Twin Towers, NIST claims that the upper block above the point of jet plane impacts of each of the Twin Towers crushed the lower block, but video analysis reveals clearly that the upper block disintegrated in waves of explosions prior to any crushing of the lower block. NIST's technical analysis into the Twin Towers collapse stops at initiation of collapse. NIST acknowledges in its response to our request for correction that they are unable to provide a full explanation, or any explanation, really. NIST tests the steel assemblies of the Twin Towers in a 2-hour, 2,000-degree fire test, and they sagged only 4 inches. But NIST tossed out this experimental data, claiming a 42-inch sag. NIST's own metallographic paint analysis indicates fire temperatures of only up to 600 degrees Fahrenheit. And yet they claim temperatures of over 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. In short, NIST's official technical explanation is fraudulent and inconsistent with the basic laws of physics. By contrast, the hypothesis of controlled demolition is consistent with all of the available forensic evidence. Since the official FEMA and NIST reports provide insufficient, contradictory, and fraudulent accounts of the tower's destruction, and since we have already filed complaints in 2009 to the Office of the Inspector General, who oversees the Department of Commerce, who oversees NIST, and we've received no redress, we are now calling upon the Attorney General, Eric Holder of the United States, to impanel a federal grand jury investigation of the individuals responsible at NIST, including lead investigator Shyam Sunder and co-project leader John Gross. And today, as we speak, every member of Congress is receiving the AE911Truth petition for a new investigation with every one of the names of the 1,000 architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. If the destruction of these buildings was a controlled demolition, this may be also evidence of treason. We are reminding our public officials that the misprision of treason is a federal offense committed where someone who has knowledge of the commission of any treason against the United States and does not inform the president or federal judge or state governor or judge, it is punishable by a fine of up to 7 years in federal prison. The ramifications of 9/11 being some sort of an inside operation are enormous, and they may have legal reverberations throughout the hundreds of existing 9/11-based civil and criminal legal proceedings. If the roots of 9/11 are in question, then the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq are also as well. And of course, the serious loss through legislation of our constitutionally guaranteed and cherished civil liberties via the Patriot Act and the Military Commissions Act. Architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth's conclusions are shared by thousands of scientists, senior-level military, intelligence, and government officials, pilots and aviation professionals, firefighters, scholars and university professors, 9/11 survivors and their family members, and other professionals around the world. Visit patriotsquestion911.com and Journal of 9/11 Studies as well. The 9/11 Truth movement, which Time magazine in 2006 called a mainstream political reality, continues to gain momentum.